So we expected big things coming into 2024, but at the halfway point of the year, Brad Arthur was sacked on his birthday, no less. So was this another wasted year for the Eels? This is the 2024 season review for Parramatta. And here to break down the Parramatta Eels 2024 season for me is zero tackle expert analyst Darren Parkin. How are you, mate?
Going well. Yeah, they're a fascinating story, the Eels. Ultimately very disappointing, but I guess the future doesn't have to be that way. But keen to look at the numbers, which tell a bit of a tale.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into that. So 12 wins in 2023, sliding down to 7 wins in 2024. Really on a downward slide.
Yeah, they can score, but the problem is they get scored against far too heavily. Cricket scores against them at times, but they outscored a couple of teams that played finals, and they were always damaging offensively. They outscored the Bulldogs and the Knights. When they won, they tended to win big, but defence dropped away substantially at about 6 points a game. We looked at the Bunnies similar, where just those defensive frailties in terms of missed tackles and the amount of runs that they were conceding, they were just far too easy to score against and far too easy to beat for that matter. So that's something that they've got to do. They've just got to plug those holes up and just make themselves a little bit harder to play against, even if you're not necessarily winning games, but stay in them longer and stop giving up so much momentum in contests.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look ahead to the 2024 pass mark. So the Eels just missed the finals in 2023. So at the start of 2024, expectations were pretty high. So what would we consider a pass mark heading into 2024 for the Eels?
Yeah, we basically looked at their list as still having a lot of the pieces of the top four side that they were in 2022 that made a legitimate run towards trying to win the title. So the theory was that there weren't a lot of holes necessarily in their list, and the fact that they ended up playing in the wooden spoon decider was a bit of an indictment on the talent that they had at their disposal. I mean, quite a few things went wrong. You sack your coach in the middle of the year, and that tends to create a bit of a waste where the next few months you're in a holding pattern, similar to the Bunnies, where it's like, well, did you need to do it now? Did you have a plan sort of set in place? Was it a case that you had to make that clean break, or was there more that could have been done in the interim to sort of develop you into that year? That the hooker role was a complete mess for them, but their list ultimately was far too good to be doing what they've been doing in the last 2 years. So I think the expectation was that they were going to challenge for the finals, and instead they challenged for a spoon. I mean, 4 of their 7 wins came against finalists, which shows how good they are.
Yeah.
But they just couldn't get any rhythm.
Yeah, especially frustrating seeing those good wins. So I think fair to say that 2024 was a failure. They did not hit the pass mark. So
100%.
Let's delve a little bit deeper into the lowlights. So diving a little bit deeper into the lowlights, let's start with Mitchell Moses only managing the 8 games.
Yeah, they were 2-1 after round 3, broke his foot in that game, and they lost 8 of their next 10. They were such a different side when he was there and when he wasn't. And what happened in the immediate aftermath was they started to cough up winning positions in games, which was the problem we alluded to at the start, where you could score heavily against them. They didn't have that ability to shut games down for 10 minutes and just really compact it when they were in front, and that spiralled out of control. I mean, they were conceding nearly 30 points a game. Only the Tigers conceded more than that. Just over 5 tries and 7 line breaks per game, which were the worst in the competition on both metrics, and no side averaged more missed tackles than them across 80 minutes, so 38.8 a game. It was 100 more than the year before. So, and you mentioned it in the introduction. I've got to mention a low light to sack a coach on his 50th birthday with no immediate upside. I think they needed to be a little bit more self-aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a few lowlights there. Let's get to the positives. Let's take a look at some highlights. So a low light is obviously sacking a coach in Brad Arthur, as you mentioned, but out of that comes a highlight, signing Jason Riles on a 4-year deal.
I think so, because it lends itself to being patient. They were in the mix for some of the high-profile coaching appointments. You look at Wayne Bennett and Maguire and a couple of those that were kicking around, but I think that changes the landscape a little bit. You bring players or bring coaches in like that, and there's a belief that you bounce immediately. I think with Riles, they set a bit of a platform to build with some patience, similar to what the Bulldogs did, where they were kind of in a bit of a holding pattern in 2023 with a new coach, and then exploded into the finals and bounced in this year. So I think that they've got the potential to do that sort of thing as they build. I mean, his background is positive. He was at the Roosters as an assistant. He spent some time at the Storm and also at the national level working with the Australian side at the World Cup. So I think he set a reasonable platform from his own coaching experience, and I like that appointment. In terms of on-field, look, Dylan Brown was terrific as a playmaker, 21 try assists for him. Clint Gutherson stood up gamely at the back when they were under siege the whole way through. And they've got a platform that works in terms of the fact that they can score. So ranked 8th in attack and scored on average the same number of tries per game as the Panthers, who won the flag. So obviously the Panthers are in another universe defensively, but that's obviously gives them something that they can build on. So
Yep, absolutely. So let's move now to the most improved. All right, so looking at the most improved, we're going to go with Joe Offengowie.
We are. He's 29, so usually this segment would be reserved for a younger player coming through, and he's been in the system for a number of years, but he stood out significantly in various stages of the season, head and shoulders above a lot of his teammates. He was their most consistent and willing forward throughout the course of the year, and looked a level above in terms of fitness, technique, professionalism, consistency, and all of that. So, yeah, he was a shining light in a really disappointing season, and probably a career best year, which gives him this honour.
Yeah, I love the story when it's a bit more of an older player making a name for themselves. So now let's take a look at the headlines. So zero tackle, there's nothing we know more than headlines, and there's no bigger headline than the sacking of a coach, as we mentioned before. So Brad Arthur, biggest headline of the year, obviously, for the Eels.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, for those who follow, say, both codes, the NRL is very different in terms of the way they will sack coaches and often announce replacements and player movements and all of that type of thing. It can put sides into a holding pattern, and I think that put Parramatta very much in that holding pattern. I mean, look, the fact that it was on his birthday is poor timing. I mean, whether they got the decision right or not, it's a completely different conversation. Look, they extended him last year, which means they probably should have either made the call then or stuck it out now. If you extend and then sack within about 12 games of that decision, it either means you were wrong then or you're wrong now. So I guess that's the way that you can assess it. And yeah, I think it just made the rest of the year a bit of a, there was a scattergun approach to the new coaching appointment where they ended up settling young when they were looking for experience. So I reckon they made the decision without having a plan in place immediately after that.
And they were in the mix for Wayne Bennett's services as
correct. So, and decided not to go down that path, or he decided not to go down that path, and they've landed where they've landed. But I don't think they had that in mind at the time.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. All right, let's look ahead to 2025 and the pass mark. So 2025, they lose a couple of players, but they do add Zach Lomax. So what do we consider a pass mark for the Eels in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, Blaze Talagi was one of their positives. He goes to the rampaging Panthers. They lose Reagan Campbell-Gillard as well at the end of the season, who's been highly regarded by a few. Zach Lomax comes in from the Dragons, as you say, and that's, at this point on paper, looks to be one of the signings of the off-season. If he can carry his dominant form into this particular season. I'd suggest similar to the Bunnies. I mean, the Bunnies are probably more capable of an immediate bounce. I think for Parramatta, it'll take a little bit more time just to settle a few things down, and that's okay. I'd be very surprised if they finish bottom four, but I think the progress will be slower for them. I think you'll see a more competitive, consistent Eels side that might win 10 games. So I'd have them just out of the 8, but certainly finishing out of the bottom 4 as well. Yeah,
agreed. New coach, you'd be happy to finish in making finals, but I think it's going to be a slow build. So that is the 2025 pass mark. Well, that wraps it up for the 2024 season reviews for the Eels. Thank you, Darren.
No worries.
Let us know in the comments if you think that the Eels can bounce back in 2025. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll be doing reviews for every NRL team, working our way from the bottom of the ladder up. And so keep subscribed on the channel. Catch all the latest NRL news at zerotackle.com.